Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I am thrilled, humbled, grateful, and excited to have with me today Carson Heady. Carson is an award-winning sales leader, author, speaker, consultant, and avid blogger. He's published 3 sales books: Birth of a Salesman, The Salesman Against the World, A Salesman Forever. He's been the #1 sales operations division leader in the entire organization for 8 roles across 4 companies. He's a top performer, being recognized for starting and leading a $50 million annual operational budget. And he's been published in numerous sales publications, served as a radio host, and been interviewed for numerous radio podcasts and TV shows. Wow, we got a lot to cover today. Carson, thank you so much for joining us.
Brandon, I'm stoked to be here. Also humbled. Big fan of your work, so glad to talk today.
No, that's awesome, and we're grateful to have you here. And the audience is dying to know, number one, you've had an extensive work experience in sales. If you had to go back in time to when you first started in sales, what is your #1 top sales secret to maximize your sales success? But before we get into that, the audience is dying to know as well, who's Carson Heady? How'd you get started in sales? And then what is everything that you've learned, every single place that you worked, that have helped you skill up, level up, master sales, and keep going throughout your career to join the top 1%? So without further ado, I'd love to just learn a little bit about, who Carson is, how'd you get started in sales, and where you're from?
Yeah, certainly. From Cape Girardeau, Missouri, small town. It's actually where they filmed the movie Gone Girl, if that helps anyone. I got into sales completely by accident.
The Gone Girl. What is the Gone Girl?
Gone Girl is a film with Ben Affleck and then former Bond girl Rosamund Pike.
That's right.
Kind of disturbing.
In the woods, right? Like the...
And it's kind of disturbing. In fact, if you watch the film, please do not think that Cape has any similarities to the way it was depicted in that film.
That's funny. Okay, so go ahead, keep going. So you're from Gone Girl.
From Cape. I moved to St. Louis a long time ago, and I got into sales completely by accident. It was actually, I was trying to go for a customer service type role. Started at Southwestern Bell at the time, now AT&T, and I was an inside sales role, and I was on the phones. We started out selling to businesses. It was B2B. And then literally mid-flight, they changed us to selling to residential consumers, folks that were calling in about their phone bill, why it was high, and we'd have to sell them stuff. So that's where I got started. I was a rep for a year plus, almost 2 years, and just was successful in that regard. And so I found sales to be something that I enjoyed and that I was apparently good at. Got promoted a few times within AT&T, serving in the telecom space, but then also into the advertising space.
Yeah,
I was there for almost 9 years, which has been my longest career entry to date.
Wow.
Second being Microsoft.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. When I was doing so my second startup that I ran failed miserably, lost millions when I was at 22. So then when I had to get a job because I lost everything I owned, one of the jobs I had was being the advertising manager at AT&T. I was like the subject matter expert for search marketing that would support the inside salespeople. I had that job offer, but it was in an area in Ohio I didn't want to live. So I turned it down and then joined IBM. But I know exactly what you're talking about, because they went from like telecom to then digital marketing, right?
We were selling in the off season of all the print books, the print yellow pages in the country. And we were quite successful as an organization, but obviously the tide was turning with print, and a lot of it was going digital. And so our division was quite successful, but obviously that was a business that was evolving rapidly, and I think still is to this day. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. We started selling search engine packages.
Yeah, that's what they were recruiting me for. It's funny. Yeah,
fun conversations to have.
How was it like you go in there for B2B sales and then they switch you to consumer how does that conversation go down, and how do you transition a whole sales force that's trained to do B2B to then do B2C?
Yeah, they just called us in a room and just kind of said, "Hey, this is the change." And you know what's funny is then I was a kid. I mean, I was fresh out of college, and so that was for me, it was pretty big. Nowadays, you don't bat an eye at massive organizational changes. I mean, I think that's the way of the world today.
That's a
So
great secret right there.
if
Like,
anything, it teaches you endurance and adaptability. Seeing a lot of those changes. I mean, I went through multiple mergers while I was at AT&T. And I've seen a lot of changes and mergers and acquisitions over the years. So I think you develop a thicker skin to that sort of thing, and you get to the point where obviously change is constant, it's inevitable, and so I think it's key that we're able to reinvent ourselves throughout them.
that's awesome. So when it comes to change, like being inevitable, I feel like that's a sales secret, right? To being adaptable and being open to change. What are your tips for the audience to embrace change versus fear change? Because it's hard to do. Like as an entrepreneur, for me, it's easy just because I know shit's going to change every day.
Yeah.
But for sales, when like you're used to the product, you're used to the process, you're used to the technology, and then video comes out or content comes out, and I don't know, new products, new mergers, like you've been through a lot over the 9 years there. What's your advice or like how did you embrace change versus become scared of it?
It's a fantastic question. It's really about don't get too comfortable. Be very focused on what you need to achieve now, but as things happen, be able to pivot and react. Don't there's a lot, it's easy to be emotional about those types of things because if you become very invested in what you're doing and in your process, it's going to be hard whenever there's a massive change. So I think it's paramount to make sure that you understand the reasoning for the change. And as a sales leader, there was a lot of times where I was the one maybe making the change or I was the ambassador of the change too. So I think it's also important that when you're a sales leader, you're getting the buy-in of your team where you're able to say, hey, I know the ramifications of this. Or maybe it's just me sitting down and listening, letting the team vent to me and to listen to their frustrations or maybe their ideas of how things could be implemented better during the change. But it's key to be able to evolve and to be able to endure. Because the thing is, the change that happens today that upsets you, 6 months from now, it may be a moot point. Things may continue to change. So you've got to be very realistic and grounded in where you're in and why you're there.
That's awesome. And you went from sales rep to sales manager to like leading the internet sales team to director of sales and ops. So 9 years, like it's so funny. I don't talk to a lot of people now that have like that massively long, like almost a decade of experience at one place. Can you go through maybe the biggest things that you learned in each of the positions in sales there that helped you level up to do the next thing?
Absolutely. And in fact, if I could encapsulate it into one sentence, it's stay true to your roots. I think that the biggest mistake that a lot of sales managers and people that move up the chain make is that they forget from whence they came and they become so wrapped up in making sure that they are pushing out whatever the changes are or making sure that they're pushing out the agenda that they forget. They forget to really, truly be humanized and be humble and be in tune and attuned to the people that work for them. I've got a philosophy I call the sales food chain. And everything that you do has to be 100% focused on the people that you touch in the sales food chain. Like I touch the customer and I touch my manager if I'm a rep. And so the customer is my world. They're the center of my universe. But at the same time, I need to understand my manager's priorities and what makes them tick so that I can effectively impact both sides of the food chain. And I think that's true of anybody. If I'm a director of sales, I've got managers that work for me. I've got a VP that I report to. Same thing. I've got to understand what makes these guys tick, my managers, how I get their buy-in, how I can promote them in the business and effectively mentor them. But at the same time, I've got to make sure that I'm staying true to the company initiatives because that's who pays me. And that's who, I have a contract with them. So it's all about those pieces. And I think as I moved through each step of the race, I felt like I did a really good job of attuning to the people maybe that were, that reported to me. But, sometimes I did too good of a job doing that and I wasn't as attuned with where my bread was buttered. So it's a balance and it was a great learning experience for me. But I think that's the biggest piece, Brandon.
Yeah. I love that you were able to not only focus on the customer, but you turned your management team into your customer. Like you figured out, okay, what motivates them? What are their needs? What are their goals? What are their responsibilities? And you like looked at them like they were a prospect, but they managed you. And, how did you go about figuring out how to keep them ultra happy and a fan of you in sales, as well as the customer?
It's the same philosophy as customer philosophies. And, we use this term today, customer obsession. Well, we have to have that same obsession about people that work for us. Understanding what makes them tick, investing in them. I've talked to a lot of sales managers that, that don't want to pull their reps off the phone as an example for training or out of the field. And, you have to show that investment. In fact, when I go to trainings, that's sometimes the best recalibration of my compass as well, because I'm like, yeah, this is what the company is doing. And they invested time and the energy in me to really show me the roadmap, show me behind the curtain, be transparent. Transparency wins. And that's with customers. That's with people that you're working with in your organization. So I think those were kind of the biggest understandings that I had. A lot of times managers too, they don't want their rock star to leave them or whatever it is. But here's the thing. If you get your rock star promoted, other people are going to want to be your rock star. And so looking at that big picture, helping people see that big picture. And that's true, again, of customers, of people that work for you, sales reps, managers that work for you. If they can see the big picture, then and they are part of the process and part of the winning, anything's possible. And that's been the philosophy that I've tried to lead teams with for my entire career.
Wow. That's incredible, man. What was your biggest failure or learning experience, like ass kicking at AT&T?
Well,
like the biggest challenge maybe that you faced? Just curious.
Yeah. I was young, and I think that back then I fought every battle. I didn't know how to choose my battles. And it's very
I could probably relate, dude. I could probably relate.
Yeah, it's very important, especially build consensus. I'd say that was my biggest learning. You're working as part of a team, and you can't go rogue and you can't be bigger than that team ever, under any circumstances. Even if you're more important to the team and you know it and everybody else knows it, you still have to be extremely humble. You've got to make sure you're building consensus, getting buy-in from that team, because you exist primarily as a leader to remove obstacles from your team, be responsive, and make sure that you are functioning as a team. You're a part of it, but that team, you can't be the team all by yourself. And I think that's the key piece, is making sure that you lead with empathy and understanding. You understand what drives your team, and then you help them achieve their goals beyond their wildest dreams. But at the same time, you play a very important role. Even when you disagree with the direction of your organization, you've got a contract with them. You agreed to be the person that you said you'd be on interview day. They agreed to bring you training and support, et cetera, but they're paying you to be the ambassador of the organization. And there were probably times when I forgot that or didn't realize it. And I definitely learned it. And it's helped me along the way since.
Yeah, I love the idea about picking the battles and not trying to win or fight every battle. It's just not worth it. And it probably does more harm than good to get you. You need all these people to help support you in the deal. Typically. So every time that I know I personally did that, it just destroyed kind of output and production. That's awesome, man. So AT&T, successful career, almost a decade, right? Like insane, awesome. Congrats. It's huge. And I bet you the training there was incredible too. What was after AT&T?
Yeah, so actually I spent some time starting to write and went to Verizon. I worked with some of their dealer, a lot of their business model is indirect, so I worked with their dealers. Was recruited then by T-Mobile, and then also had a scenario where I was choosing between Apple and Microsoft. Luxurious position to be in, right? You'd think it was actually a stressful decision, but I had this amazing opportunity to come to Microsoft in a brand new role, and that's what I ended up doing. So it's been a fun ride, but it's amazing because sometimes as salespeople, especially as you get older in tenure and career, like I'm getting to be now, amazingly. You look back in your career and you look at those seminal moments, and there was a phone call that I got to come work, looked at me for that role had I not written a book back then. We were, I know in our conversations before, Brandon, we talked about the importance of building your personal brand. 10 years ago, I didn't even know what that meant or what that was, but I was kind of doing it.
Oh yeah,
before
and just
it was
because
cool.
your internet broke out a little bit, you were saying, so back then what happened? Just because I think the internet went out a little bit. Say that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So you were at Verizon and then T-Mobile, and then you decided to start writing?
So I was at Verizon, and then I was at T-Mobile, and then I was in a position where was actually recruited by Apple and Microsoft at the same time. And I got this amazing opportunity to start a role at Microsoft that was brand new, and I could kind of forge my own path. And it was something I couldn't pass up. And it was amazing because I think as salespeople, a lot of times we look back in our career at those seminal moments, right? The ones that really mattered and defined us. There was a phone call that I took in 2011, and it was an opportunity to go work with Verizon. They wouldn't have even called me had I not written a book. And back then, I was kind of, we were talking, in our previous conversations, Brandon, just about the importance of building a brand. And I feel like I was doing that back then, even though I didn't know it, and doing these things that beget the future of my career. But had I not taken that one phone call, I never would have been on the path that led me to where I am now. And it's been
what made you decide to write? Like, why did you write The Birth of a Salesman?
Yeah, I've always wanted to write. I wrote silly stories when I was a kid of like my friends and I going on outer spaceships, and I also wrote like time travel stories with my friends like through grade school. And so as I got older, I always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what to write about. And when I was at AT&T, I was actually writing a column for one of their newsletters, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It was all about sales. And I was like, hey, I love writing about sales and I want to write a book, but there's so many good sales books out there I could never hold a candle to that I don't want to compete in that space. So I came up with this interesting, like, hey, what if I did like a book inside a book? So it's a fictional author of a sales book who has, kind of a sales career of success, successful sales career, who writes a book. And so I incorporate the novel and the sales book into one.
That's cool. Yeah, so you get a bunch of lessons along the way and the experience, man.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So writing that book, like as a hobby, helped you land the Verizon deal.
Yeah, and because of that, I went to T-Mobile, and because of that, I came to Microsoft. And had I not done that, I wouldn't be here today. It's amazing because I think sometimes in the moment you don't realize the impact of some of these opportunities. And that's why I say chase every opportunity that you get. Somebody wants to interview you, talk to you, go have the conversation, see where it goes. Until there's actually a decision in front of you, there's no need for action. Just talk to everybody you can. Network.
Another micro secret.
Network is everything.
Talk to everyone, network. How do you overcome the fear? Like, how do you overcome the fear of in sales, like being able to talk to anyone, right? Like whether it's building your personal brand, like, I'm writing a book and I've got the fear of hitting the publish button on Amazon. I don't fucking know why. I post like 50 times a day on LinkedIn, and I don't know why I'm scared to just push it out there. But like, how'd you overcome the fear to just write the book and get it out there? How'd you overcome the fear of just blogging on Twitter 20 million times, right? And you've got now a following of over 300,000 followers. Like, how do you handle that?
Was younger, I was very introverted. I hated speech class. I would have never, I even ripped up a story that I wrote in class once because somebody gave me negative feedback. So I was like, well, I'm done with this. So I was very conscious about all of that stuff and had no desire to like be out in any way, shape, or form in public eye. I think it changed over the years because as you go through different experiences, you inherently will develop a thicker skin. But I think as salespeople, a lot of times we have to train ourselves to just shut the brain off and do what we know we need to do. Execute, commit to a course of action and execute. Think about it. Every time we get a rejection or we work on a deal for months and then they say, nope, I went with the competitor. That stuff can be crushing. We've all been through it, but you know what happens? You can do one of two things. You can lay down and you can sulk in it. And sure, we all do that for at least a day, but what do you do after that? Get up, keep going forward, act like every new day is a new opportunity? Or do we sulk on that initial thing? Do we keep looking for a different job where things are going to be easier for us? And I just made the conscious decision that I was going to maximize everything that I was doing. I mean, look, I get bone crushing deal losses all the time. I mean, it's happened throughout my entire career, but I will get up and I will take the learning from that loss into the next deal and turn it into a win. Or maybe it's not a win, but I continue to learn. And that's where we grow. That's where we,
develop. Yeah.
That's
that's incredible, man. I love that. And how do you go from Telco to Microsoft and Apple? Like, hey, we're like, transitioning to a whole new industry. That could be hard to do or overcome. And I just want to hear about that. Share with us that experience of how did you even get into that? I know the different Verizon and AT&T led you there.
Sure.
But then what? Apple and Microsoft come after you because they want to get into telco, or how do you bridge it together?
It's a valid question. I try to make sense of it myself sometimes. I started out in telco, and I was able to get a promotion into the Yellow Pages side, but it was a new division, and they were just looking for somebody that was a good sales manager. So I was fortunate they picked me to start this new department, and that's how I got into the advertising space. It was digital because we were selling in the off season of the print Yellow Pages and selling internet search and stuff like that. But when I went to Verizon, it was actually, again, because of my sales management. They needed to pull a district out of a rut. And so I was pulled in as kind of the district sales manager. We were doing wireless at the time. I didn't have any real claim to fame in the wireless game outside of the fact that I had sold cell phones years prior when I was an inside sales rep. And then because of the success at Verizon, I was tapped by T-Mobile when they were really kind of galvanizing their efforts and making their climb up the charts. And then I knew somebody that was at Microsoft that recruited me in for a role here. And I actually came in through the back door. It was a new division within the retail channel, but it was this role that was a leadership role that was also selling devices and cloud, et cetera. And it was a brand new role. So there was no roadmap for it. I came in, my team was insanely successful. And because of that, I was recruited into another role. And then, it's just, that's how the journey has been. But I didn't set out to get into technology. It's been the sales skills and the endurance and the ability to be successful in each circumstance that has brought me to where I am now. And it hasn't been easy. I mean, there have been definitely a lot of wins and losses along the way, but I think that's the key piece, is that it's all a journey.
Yeah. And so they recruit you to join you said the Microsoft Direct Business Channel, right?
Correct. Yep. You got it.
And what does that mean? So you're selling the retail hardware direct to businesses, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. So most of Microsoft's business and work and revenue, a lot of it is driven by our partners. They do a lot of the implementation work. Very robust Microsoft partner ecosystem that we value very substantially. And so this was actually a direct from Microsoft foray. We did work in conjunction with the retail channels, but my division was specifically selling to corporate accounts. And, we had small business, it could be mom and pop shops, all the way up to some of the larger brand names that any of your audience would recognize. And it was incredible. I mean, we had some pretty massive deals that, put us on the map. And St. Louis, our team was number one for 8 quarters in a row in the world.
That's insane. So this is brand new territory, right? Like, walk me through what you guys did, the secrets to what you did to make that happen. So you get hired. There's no roadmap. There's no, this is a brand new initiative. We got to sell direct business channel, not rely on the partners, go to the brands in St. Louis, right? So walking me through from point A to point beginning to 8 quarters in a row in the world number one team.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it was all white space. So, and it can be daunting. I mean, when you're starting a new territory or a new role, you're like, well, geez, where do I begin? There's so many places. I try to liken it to it's about prospecting in general, and it's about developing the warmest leads possible and prioritizing based on the warmth of those leads. So number one, I mean, the retail store had been open for some time, and they were, they classified or were supposed to classify different folks that had come in from a lead perspective that would fit into this wheelhouse. It would be those businesses or
Awesome.
people that had bought business devices. So the first thing, we're reaching out to them. We're making sure that we establish a connection and a relationship. We're going out visiting, understanding their needs. Boom. Second piece, there's a lot of partners that sell different services that we were being asked about, but that we didn't sell. There were partners that didn't care about the stuff that we sold and getting that. So let's form a mutually beneficial partnership whereby if I get this business, I'm going to refer it to you. And if you find out about this business, you're going to refer it to me. Form that. Now I've got an engine working, bringing me leads. So you've created that demand gen. The other piece, there's so many prospecting tools out there. It's pure white space. Let me start going out prospecting, making some relationships. And long story short, there was a lead that I followed up on that honestly I was told, there's probably no business there whatsoever. You shouldn't even waste your time with the meeting, I was told. And I went out there and wound up turning that into a $5 million deal.
Wow.
There were several others that were of similar, ilk, but that was probably our biggest claim to fame was that deal. And it was kind of the gift that kept on giving because it wasn't a lump sum of $5 million. It was recurring business. And it was a very well-known deal, and it actually led to me getting promoted again.
How did you do that deal? So and by the way, like I could relate because when I got hired at IBM Interactive, they're like, this is a former customer, you know, they're not gonna buy. They left us, and I'm like, dude, you got to pitch it, you got to try. Exactly. And I had the same experience. Mega multi, $10 million, deal. How did you do this one?
Not taking no for an answer. I was told, hey, these guys have a deal in place with some other business, and you're probably not going to be able to structure a deal that will work with the way that they're wanting to roll out these devices. I mean, I was basically given barriers, and I just refused to accept the barriers. I went out and met with the customer anyway. What's the worst thing that happens if I sit down and talk to somebody, So I went out, sat down, figured out the parameters of what they were looking to do, and then I took it back to the business, got creative, pulled in people to help me, and said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. And long story short, we were able to double the discount that they were getting from another organization, and we were able to structure the deal the way that it made sense, and rest is history.
That's awesome. And that led to your promotion.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I was in that role for about 2 years, and we had several other really just fun stories. I actually earlier today ran into one of the customers that we worked with that was part of a government agency at the time, and we had a very large government sale. And what's funny is because of who it was affiliated with, we actually had armed escorts taking all of this equipment out. What a fun experience, but just it was all about just nothing's impossible, and I think we're getting better as sellers and just really as organizations of that outside the box approach is what wins. I mean, that's the only way we can differentiate and evolve as sellers and as organizations in today's day and age. So we had a lot of sales that were probably of that magnitude, but frankly, that was probably the most infamous.
Wow. That's amazing, man. That's incredible. Anything else that comes to mind as far as secrets or takeaways that you want to share from your experience at Microsoft, climbing the ladder of this new blue ocean kind of unit?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is when you're starting something new or when you're doing something new, with being an entrepreneur even, which is kind of the way of the world today, processes sometimes are not going to be fully baked. I mean, they're being created and crafted on the fly.
Right. Making it up as you go, really.
Got to be versatile. Exactly. And you can't, one of my favorite movies is the movie Cocktail from the late 80s with Tom Cruise and they're flipping the bottles. There's a line in there. Never show surprise, never lose your cool. You can't lose it over the lack of process or processes failing you, because that stuff is going to happen all the time. And I'm telling you, like, if you're looking at another job because your process is half baked and it's causing you frustration, every company has their own version of that. So, the key thing is understand your processes. Sure, there's always going to be shortcomings no matter where you are. But we were coming up with some processes on the fly and there was a lot of learning. during a lot of evolution. Just be understanding and empathetic to the relationship that you've got with the person that's helping you, because they're under pressures and things like that too. I think at the end of the day, it's just be a human, be understanding, be very obsessed, customer obsessed, and then obsessed with the other people that you're talking to and working with on your team to make sure that you care about their stake in the game and the relationship. That's it. It's just basic human principles go so far. And I think a lot of times as sellers, we forget that.
I love that. Damn, that was good. That was good. And I want to get into your top sales secret, because you've shared, 20 different, 30 different micro secrets throughout this session, which has been incredible. But before I do, do you have any daily habits? Like goals, habits? If people are like, man, I want to replicate Carson's success. What's your routine like? What are your habits like? And this is the first time I've actually asked. I should have asked to everyone this in these interviews. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just start now with Carson. Do you have any specific habits or things that you do every day?
Absolutely. I think it's important because we're all at varying stages in our lives and our careers. And I've got a wife and 2 kids now. And so,
and congrats, man.
Yeah. So my evenings are family times. Thank you. And so, I've got to get up first thing in the morning. I usually get up 4:30, and I go to the gym. I free my mind. Wow. I get my best ideas then, because nothing is bothering me at that point. I don't have any emails. I don't have anything happening. I control that time. That's my me time. I may stream a show while I'm on the treadmill, or I may do whatever else. But frankly, I get a lot of ideas. I can respond to email. I can do what I choose. Then I'm back home. I'm getting the household moving and everything going that needs to happen, and then it's full guns a-blazing into work. And so I think from a scheduling perspective, it's all about prioritization. You got to look at your day. What is essential? What is not? And I had a great lesson from a leader a couple of years ago around being able to look at my schedule, and even though, because I'm the kind of guy, I'll say yes to as much as I can, because it's like, yeah, throw it on me. But sometimes you've got to look at your schedule and you've got to say, look, it does not make sense for me to have this meeting today. It's not mission critical. It's not imperative. I can move this to next week. And then unabashedly do that, because you've got to look at, hey, these are the 5 things that I have to get done today. I make a list for myself, and I make sure that as I'm crossing it off, I'm doing it. But those are my top priorities. It's easy for me to get sucked into back-to-back calls and meetings. Yeah. So move the stuff you can. Make a list for yourself of what you got to get done today, or what's mission critical, what's the most important, and make sure under no circumstances do you miss those items. And then make sure also, if you're married or in a relationship, text or call your wife as much as humanly possible during the day, whenever you think about it, because that will go a long way too. You're investing in your
I love that. So, but I don't do that. I got to do that. That's smart.
Prioritize. It's all about prioritization. And frankly, too, I've had 7 meetings booked at the exact same time for me before, at the same time. You got to prioritize based on the relationships, the warmth, the potential revenue, the output, the impact you're going to have on that deal. If I can delegate, I will. If it has to have me on that call or whatever it is, and it's a big deal, that's the one I'm obviously going to prioritize. So if you've got any question, I know a lot of times we struggle with the prioritization of our day. Focus on that propensity to buy, the propensity for revenue, the value.
Great secret.
That's it for me.
Highest likelihood to buy. Prioritize that calendar. It sounds like buy buyers to least buyers.
Exactly.
If you've got a buyer that you need to pitch, then you've got an internal meeting to talk about value propositions. You probably should pitch that customer.
You got it.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good. I can't believe the 7 meetings. I've actually never had 7 meetings booked at the same time. That's incredible, man.
Yeah. I called the Guinness book. I think I'm in the next edition.
Yeah, dude, for sure. 7 meetings. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, and I love the texting to your partner. That's genius.
You got to do it.
You're just saying if it just comes to your mind, or if you're thinking about something, just shoot it out.
Exactly. That's the warmest relationship. And my wife would tell you, I function almost like a machine, like a computer. I come up with something and then I just focus on it, get it done. But make sure you're thinking about the people that you love in your life, because without them, there's no need to do what you're doing.
Right. So good. So good. And it's actually a part that we don't talk a lot about on the show, but we probably should, because it's hard to, I assume it'd be very difficult to sell successfully without the other relationship and foundations that you've got kind of that
Depends
help.
on how much motivation you have. I mean, I've been a dad for the last 11 years plus, but obviously I was successful in sales before. It's just what motivates you most. And at the time, it was, well, I want to make money. I want to rise the ranks. I want to establish a career. Now it's, I want to be comfortable so that my kids are comfortable, my family's comfortable, my wife can do what she wants to do. So your motivations will change over time, but and so will your priorities. My priority 15 years ago was I want to make enough money so I can do whatever I want. And now it's, I want to have I want to be a successful family unit. So.
That's awesome. When it comes to, you talk about delegating. Is it hard? I have this problem. I bet you a lot of people do.
I know where you're going.
Being able to just trust your people to make the best decision and just let it go and let them figure it out. Like you said, like when I've got the 7 meetings and maybe I can't be at all 7 and I just got to empower my people to just go and run. Like, how do you do that? I'm a young leader. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm sure a lot of people listening in sales are trying to do the same. Yeah. How have you developed that skill and what are the secrets there?
No, you said it. It's empower. You have the power to empower. So sometimes you have to, somebody that I respect a great deal, kind of a mentor that told me not long ago that sometimes you just have to empower people and let them go out and do. And it does require a great deal of trust and kind of a leap of faith. And sometimes, believe me, they're going to botch it. But the thing is, you can't be all things to all people, and you are diminishing your own effectiveness in the things that matter most if you don't delegate on some of these other pieces of the business that can be delegated. So it's all about that prioritization. So on a given day, I may choose to prioritize this $1 million deal over this $15,000 deal. $15,000 deal is very important to me. So I'm going to make sure that 2 of the best people are on it that I can, get into the game for that. But I'm also going to stay abreast of that. I may send a follow-up email to these folks to say, hey, what can I support that came out of today's session? If something goes wrong here, which sometimes it does, it's damage control. I mean, again, it's being able to evolve and pivot very quickly, and being proactive enough to understand that, hey, I can't be there for this, and these are the right people. But if something happens, we also have to be reactive, make sure that we are addressing it with the right touch. And maybe it's as simple as, again, be human. Call the people. If a customer situation was impacted, call the customer directly. I think in this day and age too, sometimes we don't rely enough on the personal touch. We rely on email and a lot of conference calls and things like that. Give them a buzz, see what makes sense. Maybe I go out there and visit with them or grab them a cup of coffee, but focus on the human element. This is a person, and I want to make sure that I'm empowering my people, but when that doesn't work effectively, that I address it adequately.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for the advice there. That's tough. And I know now's the time. We've gotten so many tips, secrets, strategies, best practices, recommendations from you, Carson. Sales secrets from the top 1%. Where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Carson, if you had to go back in time to when you first started in selling and you could only give yourself one piece of advice, one top sales secret to maximize your sales success, what would that be? And we're going to cover the what is the top secret, why is it the top secret, and then how can the audience apply that today? But let's just focus on, what is that top sales secret in your mind?
For me, and this has changed over the years, but I'd say today, with that in mind, it would be humble and endure every situation that's thrown at you. And what I mean by that, it's similar to what we talked about before, Brandon. I think we have a lot of situations that are thrown at us, and it's natural because we're human to react to those or to dwell on them, or I've lost a deal and I sulk on it, or I'm in a meeting and I don't agree with what's happening, so I decide to run my mouth, whatever that looks like. It's very important to be humble in these situations, gain consensus, make sure we're operating as part of a team and an organization, and that we understand our role. I like to say, again, we have a deal with our organization. I mean, they agreed to hire the person that they interviewed. So if we stop being that person, we're defaulting on that deal. Just like if they stop giving us the support and the training and things like that they agreed upon, they're defaulting on the deal, and we have a legitimate beef, which may or may not be rectified. But endure. And I would say endure, because you're going to go through so many different changes. You're going to have a lot of things happen that you may or may not agree with. There's going to be things that are completely out of your control. So controlling what you can control becomes all the more important. And then finally, there's going to be a lot of times where things will happen that are unfair or unjustified. And if you endure them rather than reacting to them, you will go wherever you want to go. And what I mean by that is, if you become that person that every time something happens that you disagree with, you voice your opinion vocally, you're vocally galvanizing the troops, that's going to be a mark that follows you for the rest of your career. So it's so important, even when you disagree with something, that you're able to make it work within the parameters. I mean, look, I've had things that have happened that have messed me over on a report or messed me over in a role, just like I've had things that happened that benefited me that honestly shouldn't have. There's always that give and take. And so I think the key thing is understand. It's kind of like investing in the stock market. You may invest in a stock that you think is going to go up or that has gone up, and then it goes down. And then you pull your money out immediately because you're skittish, or do you ride the wave and endure and stay the course? Because I've read the articles. If you keep your money in the stock market, in the general consensus of the stock market over 20 years, statistically, you're guaranteed to make a gain. And that is the case. And it's the same with your career. You're constantly investing in your career, be it with relationships, be it with learning, be it with training, be it with networking. And if you stay the course through everything that happens and you manage to keep your head down, endure, sure, talk to mentors, talk to people within your organization that you trust, and maybe in confidence, you tell your manager, like, hey, this changed. I need to understand that change, and I need to understand how it impacts me and how I can do better. And these are my thoughts, and this is my feedback, if that's a good relationship. But stay the course and endure, because if you do that, you will be the last one standing. You will be there. You will go wherever you want to go. That's definitely been the biggest lesson that I've learned over time.
Wow. Be humble and endure. I love it. And, how do you avoid, like, for the audience, because it sounds like endure and work through when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And you've done that at like AT&T, you've done that at Microsoft. Instead of trying to fight or quit, like, work through it and realize that you have to be resilient to endure those situations to get to the kind of the promised land or the win over time. How can, what's your recommendations for the audience to do that? Because that's easier said than done, I feel like.
It is. It is. It's all about focus and staying focused on the priorities. I mean, obviously, you came here for a reason. You applied for this job or accepted the job for a reason. And a lot of times we have to mentally transform ourselves back to that person we were on interview day. Why did I want to be here? And if things have gone awry or amiss, why is that? And what of that can I change or control myself? Look, it all comes down to people and process. That's it. If we have the right people, or people that are, that have the right perspective or personality or mentality or work ethic or whatever it is, doing the right process. And again, the process could be any number of things, and it's going to evolve and it's going to change. We're going to add stuff to it. We're going to subtract stuff from it. But if you have the right people doing the right process, you're guaranteed success. You have the highest probability of success. Sales is not overly complicated. There are complexities, but it's not overly complicated, because if you break it down, it's in essence a game of probability. If I pick up the phone and call a prospect, I have a certain probability of them answering and getting into a dialogue with me. But if I have a really fine-tuned message that differentiates me from everybody else that called them, I have a better probability. So every action that you do, you need to focus on the probability of potential success. And so I am a big fan of constantly being in calibration mode, looking at, okay, today, how can I maximize this day? Yesterday might have absolutely sucked, right? But I got to put it out of my head because it's gone. I take some learnings from it and I apply it to my process today. But every day I've got to approach the day the exact same way. Everything from the past is gone, and I've got to make sure that I optimize on today's opportunities. Because if you don't, and you're still sulking about yesterday's lost deal, when an opportunity presents itself today and I see in the business journal that XYZ company named a new CEO, and I don't jump at the chance to try to meet them via email or LinkedIn or whatever that looks like, shame on me, because then I'm lost. My competitor already reached out to them. They win the deal because I was sulking about yesterday's loss. So I think be in calibration mode constantly. That's how you endure. You constantly look at what can I control? How can I go to market today? Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. I will learn from that and take it with me as part of my journey. But focus on the day, focus on every opportunity that you get. And frankly, if you leave a conversation or even a deal knowing the specific reason why they didn't do business with you, why they told you no, then you can take that knowledge and roll it into the next deal and do better. You win. You're a winner, period. So I think reminding yourself of that you can win from losing, that's how you endure. That's how you recalibrate.
Win from losing. I like that. Yeah. And then just when you've gotten so much success like yourself, how do you stay humble, right? Like, because we talked a little bit about it, but we talked more on the endearing, but, say you're number one or you're working your way towards the top 1%, last question here with the secret is, how do you stay humble in sales when you've amassed a lot of success like you have throughout your career?
It's a great question. And it's funny that you asked that, because when in my 20s, I was not overly humble, or at least I put on an air that I wasn't. There was some need in me to like project this confidence that may or may not have actually been there, because I didn't want my team to ever think that I could bleed or be vulnerable or anything like that. But as you get older, your priorities change. I mean, frankly, having getting married and having kids, I mean, it inherently changes you anyway. But yeah, I think the main thing is like, I work in an organization where I'm surrounded by some of the most brilliant people in the world. That's, to me, is intimidating.
Right.
I walked in and, it took me several months to really feel like I even knew what the heck I was doing. And frankly, sometimes there's still times where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but that's the piece. You've got to get to the point where you feel comfortable going to a team member or finding resources that can help you, because that's what's going to make you better. And when you're able to be cognizant that, look, I know relatively nothing. Brandon, I look back, I wrote a sales book 10 years ago in my 20s. And
that's so awesome, by the way.
I didn't know anything about sales back then. I was an idiot. I kicked my former self to think that I knew enough about sales to write a book in my 20s. What an idiot I was. How pompous I must have been. Because now I feel like I don't know squat about sales, but I know a lot more than I knew in my 20s. We're always learning. And I think that's the main thing. That's why I love having conversations like this, love having conversations with sellers and leaders, because that's how I get better. Because I hear, right, oh my gosh, you're doing this, like I can do that too. And, taking those pieces, we're all a conglomeration of the people that we touch. That's our sales process. That's how good we are at sales. Find those best practices, assimilate that into your process. That's how you get better. And it was when I realized how much I had to learn and how much I still have to learn to this day, it makes you humble. You are humbled in the presence of the sales game.
I love that. Wow. Carson Heady, thank you so much for the time today and for sharing your secret. Be humble. And what was the last piece of that? Be humble. Endure.
Constantly recalibrate and endure. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I forgot the word, endure. Yeah. So be humble and endure. You learned everything you needed to learn about how to execute being humble and enduring and fighting through the challenges that you're going to overcome and be faced with in sales. You just got to get through it. Be positive, be open-minded, and be a team player. Carson, where can the audience learn from you, follow you, connect with you, subscribe to you for more sales tips, strategy, content?
And I appreciate that. I'd love to connect with as many people as possible. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Furthermore, Twitter, CV Heady 007, big James Bond fan. And awesome. I've got a blog as well on WordPress.
And by the way, so you've got 30,000 followers. What's the secret? How'd you do that?
Time, content, and the willingness and desire to network with as many people as I could. I started, doing a lot of the social media stuff probably about 10 years ago. And I think a lot of it, because it does, you have to post what people will deem as quality content, and there's hits and misses in that. So I learned along the way, but a lot of it too is just partner with and network with the people that do what you want to be doing.
That's awesome. Partner with, and say that again, partner with and
yeah, partner with and network with the people that do what you want to be doing, because those are the ones you can learn from.
I love that. And that's exactly why we wrote this book, bring in experts like yourself. So the audience, follow Carson Heady on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You've got the blog. Where's the blog at?
Yeah, it's on WordPress.
Awesome. Do you want to throw out a site for the audience just so they can look it up as well?
It's not an easy one. So you
Carson Heady. Yeah, carsonheady.wordpress.com, right?
That's it.
Awesome. And then pick up a book. Pick up the books on Amazon. The Birth of a Salesman, The Salesman Against the World, The Salesman Forever. Incredible. Thank you so much for writing those. That's awesome. I love the way that Carson positions these and takes you along the storytelling and the lessons that you learn along the way. I highly recommend picking up the books and following Carson. And thank you, audience, for joining us for this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Pick up a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com. And you could also tune in these episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever anything is being hosted anywhere. Look up Sales Secrets from the Top 1% and tune in. Thank you.